Hi everyone, my name is Karen. This is my channel Rather Be Reading, and today I'm bringing to you the Alphabet Soup book tag. So the Alphabet Soup book tag was originally created by Sean the Book Maniac. I will leave a link to the original video for this tag down below. So this is actually a series of tags around letters in the alphabet. So I've done one so far. I think that one was for A, the letter A, and this one is for N. So it's actually called the Alphabet Soup book tag. N is for Novella. So we're going to jump straight in. It's obviously all questions surrounding the letter N in the alphabet. So let's jump straight. I find this a really fun tag, like a series of tags to do, to just like kind of do every now and again when you're looking for a fun tag to do, because he's got a few right now. I think he's got one for E, one for W, maybe another one, I'm not sure, but as he keeps creating them, just like fun ones to kind of keep in your back pocket as a tag to do every now and again. So let's jump straight in. So the first question is, N is for Novella, the last good one you read. So the last good novella that I read was The Gentleman's Guide to Getting Lucky by Mackenzie Lee. I read this not too long ago. It is the book 1.5 in the Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue series. I'm not sure if that's the series name, but it does follow the events following the Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue before the Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy. I think that's the title of the second one, and it's just a little novella. It was really cute, really comical, really loved being back with these characters, and I just really enjoyed that. I think I gave it like 4.25 stars, which is a really good rating for a novella, so I did really enjoy that one. The next question is, N is for Neighbour, a work of fiction focused on, or at least largely connected with, neighbours. So the first one that came into my head, I was like, oh, I don't know if I should talk about that one or try to find something different. But then I did a lot of Googling trying to find like books about neighbours that I could think of. And also I could find a list of like neighbour romances, like romances between like people who are neighbours. And so I went back to the one that had initially came into my head, which was Someone You Know by Shari LaPena. This is one of her thrillers. Her most recently published thriller, actually, I think it is, that I have read. And this one deals with neighbours because it is set kind of in a like town or community that there is a teenage boy who's been breaking into people's houses, and he hasn't been doing it. He's not stealing anything. He's kind of been hacking into their computers or like looking through their stuff and like kind of finding out secrets. And that then gets tied in with, like, there's kind of separate to that. I mean, there is a woman turns up dead, and it's kind of following the two. Sorry, did she turn up dead or is she missing? I can't even remember. There's something like that, and it's all about kind of, there's a lot of the different neighbors kind of perspectives, and it's all about like the different neighbors and like all kind of spying on each other and like all the different secrets, and, you know, do you ever really know your neighbors? All of that type of thing. And I did enjoy it. It wasn't my favorite Shari LaPena. I still preferred her and Unwanted Guest, but I did enjoy it. And it's the first one that came into my head when I thought about books about neighbours. So the next question is, N is for name, a writer you'd recommend whose first or last name starts with the letter N. And so I decided to go with Jandy Nelson, whose surname obviously starts with N. So she has 2 published works. I need her to publish another book so bad, because these were published a while ago. When was this published? 2010 and 2015. So there's already like a 5-year gap between these, or maybe 2020 is going to be the year if we go by that. So she's got her 2 books. The one I enjoyed, so this one I gave 4.5, this one I gave 5. So I'll Give You the Sun is about 2 twins, a boy and a girl twin. What are their names? Jude and Noah. And we're following them at 2 different times. So we're following them like, I think it's 5 years apart maybe in time, or a couple of years apart in time. One time period where they're close and one time period where they're not close at all anymore. And we're following it from, each time period is in the perspective of a different twin, and we're kind of like seeing like how they have come to be this way. And both of her books have like kind of almost like multimedia, it's not multimedia, but like a arty kind of like element to it. So this character, both of the like 2 main characters are artists, so you do get like, it's not a huge thing, but you do get like, I just said like 10 million times, I'm just trying to find, it's not like a huge thing, but you get like, you know, art kind of like paint swirls and splotches and things like that throughout the book. So this one I really enjoyed, but I gave 4.5. But then I loved The Sky is Everywhere by Jandy Nelson. This one is about a girl who, Lenny, who her older sister has recently passed away, and she's really struggling to deal with that, to deal with the grief. And one of the main people who she really connects with through her grieving process is her sister's, her now deceased sister's boyfriend. And so she's starting to have kind of weird feelings about that and trying to deal with that. And then also there's a new boy who comes to town. So it is kind of love triangle-ish, but it's so well done. I thought this book looked at grief and stuff in such an interesting way that I really enjoyed. And again, it does have kind of like a multimedia. In this one, the main character writes a lot of poetry. And so you get just every now and again, like her poems, but like she writes them on scraps of paper. Like one of the things she does in the book is she writes them on scraps of paper and then just leaves them randomly around town. And so you get them like, you know, written on like random scraps of paper and things. I really love this book. Jandy Nelson is definitely an author that I recommend checking out, and I really hope she publishes some new books soon. The next question is, N is for Nuptials, a work of fiction that didn't suck about a wedding. And so again, this one I was like, oh, wedding. Have I read that many books about weddings? And I couldn't really think of anything. And then I was doing some Googling, and then I came across this one. I was like, oh, I read this and I really enjoyed this book. And it's Wedding Night by Sophie Kinsella. I think this is the only Sophie Kinsella that I've ever read. And I think I recall from when I read it that it's actually one of her least popular. And I don't know if I just enjoyed it because I haven't read any of her others, and maybe I've only got, you know, it's only up from here with Sophie Kinsella for me, I don't know, but this one was just really enjoyable. This one basically follows a girl who is kind of famous for when she has a breakup, doing something completely crazy, like making these huge like kind of decisions, like jump out of a plane or do all kinds of crazy things. And basically she is getting married, just like breaks up and then comes across, I think it's like an ex of hers, and reconnects with him, and they decide to get married, like, and they're getting married like imminently. And the character we're following is actually the sister of the main character, who is like, oh my god, I need to stop my sister from making a huge mistake, and is doing all kinds of shenanigans to stop. So they actually get married, but she's trying to stop them from consummating the marriage in order so that they can possibly annul the marriage when the sister comes to her senses, as she inevitably always does. And it's all about the crazy hijinks that go on with the sister trying to stop her sister from consummating the marriage. It's like very funny, comical, like lighthearted, like cheesy, you know, funny kind of romance that I did really enjoy. So if you're looking for a fun book about a wedding, well, kind of about a wedding. It's about the wedding night more so than the wedding, but I think it counts. The next question is, N is for Not Aging Well, a book you like less than when you read it. The first one that popped into my head for this, kind of inspired by my recent My Favorites, Still My Favorites videos, was The Jewel by Amy Ewing. You guys recall that, so I've been doing a series of videos where I've been reacting to my favorites list from previous years and deciding whether they're favorites, still favorites of mine. And The Jewel by Amy Ewing was on one of those lists and was quite high up, and I was shocked. It's not that I don't still enjoy this book, like that's not really it. It's just, if I read this now, I can almost guarantee you that it would not be a 5 stars, which I gave 5 stars. And I feel like maybe one of the reasons I gave it 5 stars was that when I read this, everyone else who read it hated it. Like, this was a hated book. And so when I read it and then I quite enjoyed it, I was like, well, I don't know, I felt like I had to defend it in some way. I think there was like a subconscious like need to like talk about how great it was because everyone else was really like dumping all over it. So this is YA dystopian about a society where women of nobility can no longer have children. And we're following a girl who is like a designated surrogate. So there's basically girls who are raised to be surrogates for the nobility, basically have babies for the, you know, rich nobility so that they can continue on their bloodlines. And it's about a girl who is a surrogate. And the problems that people have with it, they didn't bother me the way that they bothered other people. But like I said, if I read this now, I don't think I would hate it. It's not that this book is terrible. I think it would be like maybe like a 3 star, but a 5 star, no way now how. Okay, the next question is N is for N, a book title with a lot of N's. This was really hard. I was like, oh, I looked through so many titles and like, I was like, there's not really that many ends. And then I literally Googled words with lots of ends and tried to find words with lots of ends and then see if I could find any titles that I knew of that had lots of ends. It was really hard. And so the book that I've chosen only has 2 ends in it, but it's a 1-word kind of title. But then that 1 word has 2 ends. So I felt like that was kind of a lot of ends. It's a stretch, I realized. But the book I picked is The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins, which obviously has the N in moon and then the N in stone. This is, I don't talk about this one as much. Well, I don't talk about Wilkie Collins that much at all, but I read The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins and loved it. Still one of my favorite books ever. And then I read this one, and this one didn't quite live up to The Woman in White for me. And so I think because of that, I always think of it in my mind as being like lesser. But really, this book is super, super enjoyable as well. It's obviously the same type of sensationalist, gothic type fiction. And this one all kinds of surrounds a moonstone gem that gets kind of stolen or goes missing at this like house of like a gathering. I think it's at a birthday party, and it's all about that, and it is super enjoyable. I should reread this. I mean, I need to reread The Woman in White as well, but so I picked this because it has 2 ends. The 2 ends is the limit of how many ends I could really find that felt like a lot. The next question is, N is for not sure. A book you keep changing your mind about whether you want to read or not. Now, again, this one was kind of difficult because I am pretty decisive in my reading tastes. In a way, or I guess more that once I've decided I want to read something, that's it, I'm going to read it. And I never really like dilly-dally from that. And to the point where if I've decided I want to read something and then I hear a lot of bad reviews, that almost makes me want to read it more because I want to know why everyone was hating it. And like you guys might know, I mentioned I never unhaul books that I haven't read, because if I bought it and like plan to read it, I still have the intention of reading it. Like I don't really backtrack on deciding to read something. So the first instinct I had for this is there are some books that I hear about and I think, oh, that sounds kind of interesting, but I'm not sure whether I want to read it, and I kind of wait to hear reviews. And so there's one book that I had thought of, because that's kind of happening with a book at the moment. I've seen it on a few people's channels, people mentioning it, but more as like either like TBRs or anticipated releases videos. I haven't heard anyone talk about the actual book and their thoughts on it and like what it turned out being, and I'm kind of waiting to hear initial thoughts before I decide whether I want to read it. So the book is We Are the Wildcats by Siobhan Vivian, because this sounds like something that maybe I would really love. It's basically about, I think is it a cheerleading team or like a girls sporting team, some kind of girls sporting team that are on some kind of bonding night or something with their coach, their new coach. And I don't know, the synopsis kind of makes it sound like maybe it's going to be thrillery in nature, which I would be into. I feel like maybe it's going to be quite feminist, which again I would be into. And I'm just not sure. So I'm kind of waiting to hear people's initial thoughts on that to see whether it sounds like something that I would end up liking and whether I should end up deciding that I want to read that or not. So watch this space. It may come up in a to-read video in the coming months if I hear some people read it and end up really liking it. The next question is, N is for nitpick, some small literary writing or book-related thing that drives you around the bend. I don't know if this is small, but my biggest bookish pet peeve, and I've talked about this, over the years on my channel, my number 1 bookish pet peeve is synopses that have too much in them. I used to be someone who, when I was deciding if I wanted to read a book, like if I was browsing in a bookstore at a library, I would kind of just skim the synopsis and be like, oh yeah, that sounds interesting. And then normally by the time I actually got to read it, I'd kind of forgotten and it had become quite vague. And so but then I would, right when I was about to pick up the book, I was like, okay, it's time to read this. I would read the synopsis and be like, yes, okay. And then go into it. I basically stopped doing that these days. I only really know about what a book is about from what I hear about it on BookTube or something. And if it's a book that I am reading because it's something I'd marked as to read a really long time ago, or I've just picked it up randomly, I kind of go into it quite blind, because I have just found that so many synopses of books just give away so much, and I cannot stand when I'm reading a book and you're just waiting for something to happen because you know that it's mentioned in the synopsis. And so sometimes you'll get hundreds of pages into a book and then be like, oh, there's that event that I already knew was going to happen because you already told me it was going to happen. And I just can't stand that. It is my biggest biggest pet peeve with books. So I could rant about that forever, so let's move on. The next question is, N is for next to nothing. A book you read as an adult that you can barely remember a blessed thing about. And so I was like, there are definitely books like this to me. So I literally went to my bookshelves and had a quick skim and found a book on there that I was like, and I've read this since I've been on BookTube. Couldn't tell you a thing about it. And that is 359 by Gretchen McNeil. I couldn't even give you a plot summary. I literally, oh no, that's so annoying. I own so few hardcovers and the dust jacket has become like bent on the inside. So this is apparently about a girl. I think she wakes up at the same time every night, and I think it becomes like paranormal in some way, but I don't even remember what I rated this. I assume it was like a 3 or a 3.5, but I couldn't tell you. Literally do not remember a single detail. So I might have to read my review if I wrote a Goodreads review and see whether this is worth maybe rereading or whether I should just get rid of this. I don't know, but I don't remember a blessed thing about it, so it definitely works for that question. The next question is, N is for New Zealand. A book or writer you'd like to read from there. Find out about one if need be. So New Zealand, a neighbour country to Australia. And I had actually thought recently a couple of times, because I don't think I even follow any book, like, are there New Zealand booktubers? If you're aware of any booktubers who are from New Zealand, like, let me know down below, because I don't think I follow anyone who's from New Zealand. And I don't really know any authors that are from New Zealand. So literally the only author that I had in my head that I knew was from New Zealand is Nalini Singh, who I have been interested in. So Nalini Singh writes paranormal romance, and there's a few people that I've watched who've talked about her, some people who've really like binged through like heaps of her series. I think she writes a lot of, I think one of her main most popular series is maybe an angel romance, but like not YA. I think they're adult, like more steamy, like angel romances. So I don't know, she's definitely an author that I would like to give a go in future. And she's like literally the only author I know of who's from New Zealand, which is really sad. Especially because we are so close to New Zealand, like here in Australia. You'd think we would hear more about like books being published out of there, but we don't. And then the next question is, N is for Nodding Off, a mind-numbingly boring book. Literally the first thing that came into my head, and again, it's probably because I talked about this recently in an unhaul, because I recently unhauled this book. It's The Casual Vacancy by J.K. Rowling. This book was unforgivingly dull. Like, it's so boring. I was so bored the whole way through, and I only read it and probably kept going because it was J.K. Rowling, but it was not a good time. I literally can't think of another book that I've read that made me more bored than this book did. The next question is, N is for next, the next book you're going to read. So the next book I'm going to be picking up after my current read, I believe, is going to be The Burning by Laura Bates. It is a NetGalley arc that I have that I was approved for a digital copy in exchange for an honest review. And it's YA, kind of fantasy elements, but I'm not really sure. It's about a girl who moves to a new town and then discovers that there was a girl who lived in her house, I think, who was burned in the witch trials, and it's about her and the way that she really relates to that character. I'm not sure if that means that she's witchy in nature as well, or how exactly it's going to work, but I look forward to finding out. So that is going to be the next book I pick up once I finish my current read. And then the final question is, N is for Now It's Your Turn, tag a bevy of booktubers. I'm actually not going to tag anyone in particular just because I don't know who would be interested in doing this, but I do recommend, like I said, looking into this. If you're just looking for a fun, you know, random kind of book tag to do, then I would recommend like looking into this series, because it's, I say there are a bunch of different ones coming out all of the time for the different letters of the alphabet. So yeah, I'm not going to tag anyone in particular, but I do recommend checking it out if you're interested. So that's it. I would love to chat with you guys in the comments down below. Let me know what your guys' biggest bookish pet peeve. Do you hate, I mean, I think everyone hates synopses that give too much away, but it is literally, it makes me so mad. It makes me really mad. Anyway, please like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe if you want to see more from my channel. That is all I have for this video today. Bye, guys.